The Pacific Ocean is so big that it almost covers the entire screen when you look at it on Google Earth. In the top right corner we can see part of the US, and New Zealand is in the bottom left, but it's mostly just water. Comparatively, if we scroll to this frame without zooming out or anything, we can see all of Europe, most of Africa, and a big part of Asia. Istanbul, Turkey is the only large city that is located in 2 continents. The city is divided by the Bosporus Strait, with the western part located in Europe and the eastern part located in Asia. Roughly 2/3 of the population of Istanbul live in the European part and 1/3 in the Asian part. If we take the first 3 letters of Sweden and combine them with the first 3 letters of Denmark, we get Sweden. If we then take the remaining letters of Sweden and add the remaining letters of Denmark, we get Denmark. When you look at the map, it might not look like France and the Netherlands border each other, but they actually do. However, they don't border each other in Europe. Instead, they share an island in the Caribbean. The Dutch side is called Sint Maarten, and the French side is called Saint-Martin. Africa only looks slightly larger than Greenland when we look at them on the world map. However, in reality, Africa is 14 times bigger than Greenland. How can this be the case? It's impossible to make the globe, which is a 3D shape, into a 2D world map without some distortion. The benefit of the Mercator projection, the most common map, is that it shows directions accurately. This has made it the standard map for people who need to navigate, like sailors and pilots. But in order to show directions accurately, areas near the poles are stretched out and look much bigger than they really are. On the website thetruesize.com, we can see how small Greenland becomes when we place it over Africa. Asia is by far the world's most populated continent, and roughly 60% of all humans live there. To illustrate just how many people live in Asia, there are more people living inside of this circle than outside of it. I found this image on Reddit, and the reason why the circle is a bit distorted is, like I mentioned before, because it's impossible to make the globe, which is a 3D shape, into a 2D world map without some distortion. The circle contains the majority of China's 1.4 billion people, a significant part of India's 1.4 billion people, and most of Indonesia's 280 million people. It also contains all of Bangladesh, Vietnam, and the Philippines, which together have a population of almost 400 million people, as well as many other countries with large populations. And the ocean takes up quite a big part of the circle, which further shows just how densely populated this region of the world is. Birth rates vary greatly between countries, with South Korea at the low end, where the average number of children per woman is around 0.7, and Niger at the other end, where each woman has an average of more than 6.5 children. And Niger isn't the only African country whose population is growing quickly. The 14 countries with the highest birth rate in 2024 are all located in Africa. Currently, Asia has a lot more people than Africa, but according to most predictions, the gap is set to reduce drastically during the remainder of this century. It doesn't look like Sweden, Norway, and Finland have that many islands when looking at the countries on Google Maps from afar, but these countries actually have a lot more islands than any other country. Sweden has the most, with more than 267,000 islands. Norway has 239,000, and Finland has 179,000. We can see the reason why these countries have so many islands when we zoom in on them. They all have thousands of tiny islands, most of them uninhabited. If someone asked which country shares the longest border with France, a common answer would probably be Spain or maybe Belgium. The correct answer, however, is Brazil. This doesn't make a lot of sense until you realize that French Guiana is part of France, and the border between French Guiana and Brazil is longer than any borders of mainland France. China is about the same size as the US and stretches across 5 geographical time zones, so in theory they should have 5 time zones. Despite this, China has chosen to only use one time zone. All of China follows UTC+8, known as Beijing time. This means that if you cross the border between China and Afghanistan, you will need to adjust your clock by 3.5 hours. If you were to drive the shortest way from California to Canada, you would still have to pass through both Oregon and Washington. But even though there are 2 states between California and Canada, Canada's southernmost point is further south than California's northernmost point. This small island just north of the US border is the southernmost point of land in Canada. If we draw a straight line, we can see that it passes through California slightly below its northern border. Interestingly, 27 out of the 50 US states have territory further north than this point. It isn't very surprising that Japan has territory farther north, east and south than North Korea. What is more surprising is that Japan also has territory farther west than North Korea. Japan's westernmost island Yonaguni is located close to Taiwan and is slightly farther west than North Korea's westernmost point. Almost everyone knows that Australia is a very large country, however only about 27 million people live there. The Chinese Special Administrative Region of Macau, on the other hand, is very small but is extremely densely populated. No country or territory is more densely populated than Macau. If we changed it so that Australia had Macau's population density, it would have 162 billion people. Remember that the entire world population currently is 8.1 billion. And if Macau had Australia's population density, it would only have 119 people, the size of a very small village, instead of 700,000 like it currently has. Europe is much further north than North America. Venice, Italy is further north than Toronto, Canada. Algiers, the capital of the African country of Algeria, is further north than Nashville, Tennessee. And Stockholm would be all the way up here if it was placed in North America. The Gulf Stream carries warm water from the Gulf of Mexico to the North Atlantic, making Northern European cities warmer than US cities at the same latitudes.